I think about the major infectious disease accomplishments in public health in my lifetime, the polio vaccine, the eradication of smallpox. They've saved millions and millions of lives. They took decades to accomplish. If we can stop this in its tracks, that would be a phenomenal accomplishment.
By early February, all of the frontrunners in the race for a vaccine were already off and running. And they were all looking at slightly different approaches, but they were all betting on the horse they knew. You have Oxford and Johnson & Johnson, they're betting on a technology called viral vector technology. With the viral vector approach, scientists take a different virus, like one that might cause a common cold, and they scoop out the guts of that virus and replace it with a little instruction manual. When injected, it coaxes your cells to produce proteins that look like those on the outside of the coronavirus. From there, your immune system mounts a defense. Novavax, a company just outside DC, went with a slightly more traditional approach.
One thing we bring to the table is our company had done this for Ebola. We had been very fast. We made a vaccine very similar to what we had here.
So this vaccine
and you have Moderna and the German company
designed
BioNTech betting on mRNA.
to implement a set of instructions,
These vaccines take genetic material, mRNA, and coat it in a little protective package that is injected into your body. That instructs your cells to start churning out proteins that we would see normally on the surface of the coronavirus.
There are instructions that they're putting into your
it's
body.
A foreign invader and mounts a defense as though you had actually been attacked by the real virus.
This technology allows us to make a completely new vaccine in less than 30 days.
We're able to move quickly because our technology has been used in personalized cancer vaccine programs in the past.
What is a personalized cancer vaccine? Y'all still collecting money for cancer research and have been for over 20 years.
You only have to change a tiny little bit to have it make a vaccine. And so that's why it can be done much faster. You needed to get multiple platforms and multiple candidates. You could not put all of your eggs in one basket. Right now, the technology that we have has allowed us to go the fastest that we've ever done. So we need to make sure it's safe, and we need to make sure it works.
Now, they don't care about safety. You take this vaccine, you're their test dummy, basically.
I thought that was ridiculously optimistic, aspirational.
I know that some people are asking us to go faster. Some people are asking us to go slower. We don't hear any of them. We will go with the speed of science.
Heartbreak in Italy as over 1,000 people have died.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
Our phase 1 study was initially expected to begin in April. We said that's not going to cut it, and we moved it in to March.
People that sign up for phase 1 trials are very brave because you're really the guinea
Think about
pig
it. People are taking this vaccine now are basically
we all felt so helpless at that point, and
so-called very brave because they're the test dummies.
To be able to do something to take a risk that others can't.
Volunteer Jennifer Holler getting the first injection in Seattle as part of that clinical trial.
The only side effect that I had was a soreness at the site of injection. I wasn't afraid because I trust science. The day after Moderna launched its phase 1 trial in humans, that small German company, BioNTech, announced its partnership with Pfizer, which is one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world.
We provide the technology. Pfizer has the strength to execute the clinical trials.
I've never seen us working with a partner better than we are working now with BioNTech. And that was very important.
Their bottom line is to make
so that we can be able to deliver.
When we started off in March and we understood that this was likely a product that would have to be kept frozen, I mean, what was a really cool challenge, then it was the scale and pace that we had to move in.
Around the same time, Johnson & Johnson scientists identified a vaccine candidate that was succeeding in the laboratory.
And there was first aha moment that I was called on Friday afternoon by one of my team members.
And she told me it's working.
I was already preparing from a supply chain perspective. I'd already ordered 250 million vials.
Wow. You already knew that y'all was gonna make money off this.
New York, the Empire State, bracing for the worst.
All you needed to do was turn on the news, and you'd be reminded by how much every day mattered in terms of lives.
It's called propaganda, buddy.
So my colleague, Diane Sawyer, had this chance to talk to Kelly Bradshaw, who's a nurse who had witnessed so much.
When you've seen someone agonally gasp for air while they have a breathing tube in, it will be burned into my brain and burned into my memory forever.
And that's what the news is trying to do. Burn all this propaganda into our minds forever.
So we
Gotta be strong.
saw some of the first data signs
properly.
that we were going to see disproportionate impact, in particular in communities
An appeal to
of
emotion.
color.
That's what it's been all
My
year
friend's
long.
name was Jason Marshall Hargrove.
Not based in facts.
He
It's not real
had
science.
succumbed to the COVID-19. He shared a story on how the lady openly coughed on the bus, and it went basically nationwide.
But for you to get on the bus and cough without covering up your mouth, that lets me know that some folks don't care.
We start seeing it hit the most vulnerable, the elderly, especially in nursing homes.
At least 10 nursing homes with patients now testing positive.
Yeah, and they was locking these people down under major restrictions and control. And how come they're the ones that die the most? Because they're people who are old, who are already have underlying conditions, and were on their way to dying anyway. It's not a surprise that these people would be dying. They would have died anyway. Alright, so here they come with their ads. So we're gonna pause this for a second and come right back.
You see the white power movement.
It's early May. Millions of
All right,
people
we
were
back
now
at it.
already working from home, including the researchers and the supply chain managers who are all together trying to race around the clock 24/7 to find a vaccine in record time.
We Zoom from early morning till
Look at
late
this
in the
person.
evening.
Holy
I really would like to connect on that with your managers. I read the newspapers and you think it's horrible, but it's also really motivating to go that extra mile again and again and again to get that vaccine out.
If I can manage the logistics for 3 kids in 3 different schools under a pandemic, I can manage distribution of a vaccine.
It was really amazing
What are you
how,
talking about?
even though everything was shut down, people found ways to meet, to talk, strategize together.
We had to find this new way of working.
I've never really stepped back and thought about, well, I'm all doing this from my bedroom. It's just the way we do work. We just get it done and we focus on
Oh, it's just the way it is now, huh?
By early May,
clowns, man.
43 states had issued stay-at-home orders, but people were starting to get restless. There were protests
No,
developing
people don't
against
follow
the
your rules just
restrictions,
because you
and
tell them what to
President
do.
Trump, he was starting to get
We're
restless.
adults. We
He
do what
was
we
starting
want
to
to do.
worry about the
Make
coming
decisions for
presidential election.
ourselves.
The president and I were looking at the timelines that the drug companies were saying. 18 months would be the most optimistic timeline in terms of getting a vaccine to the market.
President Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services is Alex Azar. He used to be a drug company executive.
And the president and I said, that's just not acceptable. And I stepped back and said, you know, we're the country
Big Pharma is
that
part
put
of
a
this
man on the moon, that
vaccination
created the atomic bomb
agenda.
in 3 years and won World War II. We can get a vaccine by January 1st.
Through a historic series of
Operation
funding bills,
Warp
my
Speed.
administration is providing roughly $10 billion to support a medical research effort without parallel. It's called Operation Warp Speed. That means big and it means fast.
The first thing I thought was I wish somebody had come up with a different name.
People who hear that word warp speed think almost of reckless speed.
They're worse,
Of
ignoring
course.
safety guidelines.
But
The
there
whole
was
thing
a
has been
really
reckless.
serious effort behind it.
Continues to be
The
reckless the
message
way
of
you guys
Operation
are
Warp Speed
treating
is that
people's
we will
health.
provide whatever it takes to develop a vaccine. The money is there. We'll work with the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, the money
the
is
U.S.
there, huh?
military will be on hand to help distribute
Military?
Operation Warp
For what?
Speed's
You gonna have
chief
military
scientist
running
will be
operations
Dr.
on its own people?
Moncef Slaoui, a
On its
world-renowned
own nation.
immunologist.
Dr. Moncef Slaoui
So-called.
had brought 14 vaccines across the finish line. He knew how to get
It's really
the
just a
development
domestic
job done.
threat.
Joining Dr. Slaoui as chief operating officer will be General Gus Perna.
General Gustav Perna was the commander of Army Materiel Command. He worked his way through college. He worked by day as a garbage man and by night as a bouncer in a bar. But
so
he
what?
is
What
the
is that
guy
supposed to
who
mean?
you'd always depend on. He was ready to retire when he was tapped to be in Operation Warp Speed.
The majority of my career has been logistics and sustainment.
The typical approach to developing a new
Order
drug
following
or a new
slaves.
vaccine is you do your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials,
You
gather your
military
data,
people are,
you
man.
then submit that to FDA for approval,
Order
and once it's
following
been approved,
slaves.
then you move into production.
What Operation Warp Speed has done is collapse all of those steps so that they are essentially happening simultaneously.
A pharmaceutical company would never make commercial scale, multi-million production lots of vaccine while they're still testing the vaccine in early stages. We did just that.
That's
Of
what
course
made it
you
so
did.
fast.
No one,
You don't care
and
about no
certainly
one's
the
health.
FDA,
This is about
wants to
money
see
and
any
control
shortcuts in the
and
development
implementing
process. So
instructions
we have had a
into
number of
the
measures that
bodies
we've
of
instituted,
the
such as
entire
rolling review
population.
of data. That's caught months to years off of the development process.
On June 1st, Operation Warp Speed awards a $500 million contract to Emergent Biosolutions, a manufacturer, to begin the mass production of vaccine.
So we are currently in manufacturing activity for both AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson.
Previously, we've responded to things like Ebola, Zika. We were built for pandemic response. All the equipment you see in here,
So
the
you're saying you
2,000
guys
liter
already
tanks,
been
we can
trained in
rapidly
how
crank
to
out millions of
respond
doses
to
of any
this
vaccine.
in a way in which you
The
know you
government
guys
was
are going to
taking
make a lot of money
massive financial
and
risk to
probably
get
hurt a
help
lot
to
of
the
people as
market.
well.
But cutting corners in the approval processes and the regulatory structure had already backfired.
The president quickly seems obsessed with the idea of hydroxychloroquine as some kind of a miracle cure.
They looked at the data and they removed the emergency use authorization for hospital setting use of the chloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine didn't work.
In fact, the health experts are saying that taking hydroxychloroquine may actually increase your likelihood of dying. So not only is it
You know
not
what
the
else
miracle
increases the
cure
risk
that the
of
president
dying?
had been boasting
Ventilators that
about,
the
it's actually
doctors were putting
something that can
everybody
be
on.
quite dangerous.
The FDA should have
Y'all
never
sure were
approved that.
pushing those.
This is a
And now these
president
masks
who
are
is
causing all types of health
touting
issues. Y'all
fake
continue to push
cures.
those.
He's even at that
And
one
these
famous
vaccines are
point,
causing people's injuries. And
riffing
y'all
about
continue to push
possibly
that.
injecting
It's not about
bleach
health.
or putting
It's about
light
an
inside
agenda.
the body to combat this disease.
Program.
When he is promising a miracle vaccine development, it seems like something you really need to be skeptical about.
I can tell you, if only 20, 30, 40% of people feel that it's safe to get this vaccine, that's not going to be enough to turn this around.
Yeah. Y'all be lucky if that many people feel
Now,
safe.
when it matters most, the
Or
straightforward
anybody who
facts.
feels safe. Let's take another break while they run their advertisements.
Number one in the phase 1 trials, small trials to determine whether or not the vaccine would hurt anyone. It didn't.
Not true. Already reports where
This morning,
their trials have hurt people.
Moderna vaccine has officially entered phase 3 already.
On Moderna's heels, pharmaceutical giant Pfizer launching the final phase of its vaccine trial.
Phase 3 is really the big kahuna.
Until you start injecting a vaccine into large numbers of people to see whether it prevents disease, you have no idea, really, how well it's going to work.
Pfizer, for
That's very
example, has
important.
44,000
The largest section of
participants
people
in
they're
the
going
phase
to
3
get
trial.
is now when they release
So I was
it,
talking
you
to
know,
Dr.
more
friends at
widely.
Kaiser Permanente and
As
said,
it
"You guys
becomes
have a
more
trial?" They said,
available to the
"Yes."
general public,
I said, "I want to
you
join."
are part of their
About a month
study.
after he started participating in the trial, they did open it up to 16-year-olds. And he did try to keep that information from me for a minute because, he was apprehensive about me joining. Being one of the first teenagers to participate is kind of a little nerve-wracking. But once they told me there was no going back, I was going to be participating in the trial.
So I was going to ask,
It's your own decision.
what's your dominant arm?
Wow.
It's really
Why
important
risk
to
your
have
body
diversity
like
in clinical trials,
Don't know
different
anything about
ages,
these poisons
different
they put inside of
genders, people of different ethnic backgrounds.
My name is Victoria Smith. I am a family physician at Ochsner Health, Louisiana. I know how COVID has affected people of color. And so I was very deliberate in wanting to be a model for other people who look like me. It felt exactly like getting a flu shot or any other injection.
And why would
I
you get a
did
flu
develop
shot?
some
Why would
soreness
you
in my
inject
arm
And the next day, I just felt a little
matter into
like
your
achy,
body. Do you know
which
what are in
lasted
vaccines?
for
Read a vaccine
24
ingredient
hours,
slip.
and the next day I felt fine.
Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson Johnson, AstraZeneca, they don't know the people in their trials. It's called blinded.
So for the volunteers, they don't know if they're getting the real vaccine or if they're getting a placebo. They go home, and from there, it's just a waiting game.
This is all propaganda.
It's not
for
just
their
about
vaccine
the race to find a
rollout,
vaccine.
basically,
It's
an
also about
agenda
the
to
race
try and
to
make people
figure
feel
out
comfortable
how to transport
with
millions
allowing
of doses
someone
across
to
the
put
world.
this in their body.
From day one, we started developing our processes, we started building our manufacturing sites, we started ordering materials, like if we had one.
Pfizer's vaccine needs to be frozen in ultra cold storage at negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit.
We'll have aircraft that are exclusively dedicated to carrying vaccine. We started back in April working on the structural modifications, working with the FAA, working on our procedures to be able to safely carry that much volume of dry ice, that much weight of dry ice, and that many vaccines.
So this is what we call our cool box. It has a GPS thermal sensor tracking its location at every moment of every day and its temperature to make sure that it's maintaining the right temperature. There'll be individual trays about the size of a personal pizza box, and each tray is about 195 vials or 1,000 doses.
The Moderna vaccine also has to be frozen, but it doesn't need that ultra cold temperature. You can keep it in a normal freezer, like one you might have in your kitchen.
We needed to have capabilities of storing tens of millions of doses of frozen vaccine.
Wow,
So we built this 15,000 square foot freezer.
They really are going to try to hard roll this to the public. They wouldn't make this much if they weren't confident
It's about getting shots in arms. And
that
where
they
will
were
those
going to put
shots
it
in
in
arms
a
occur
large
is in
group
this
of
list
people.
right here. Hospitals, clinics, pharmacies,
You better be smart and do your
long-term care
research
facilities.
before you allow someone to just put a
But some places
vaccine
in
into
America
your
are
body.
just harder to reach than
Anything.
others.
The thing
Do
to
your
watch, I think,
research.
will be will rural America be able to get their hands on doses as easy as someone who lives in a Seattle or Los Angeles?
This country has vaccine deserts, places where there is limited access.
Does it feel like the rest of the country forgets about rural areas?
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of like we don't exist.
What are you talking about?
We are a small city. The nearest hospital is 21 miles away.
Hey,
My
consider
hope
yourself lucky.
is that if there is a vaccine approved, that the rural areas are not forgotten. All I can do is
Wow, you're
hope and
crazy,
pray.
man. I live in a rural area, and you know what? I ain't
It's going to be
seeking out no
difficult
damn
to
vaccine.
get it out across the United
I
States to
will run
everyone who needs
strong
it.
on
It's going
my
to be even
own
harder to get it
immune
out
system
to
until
every
the
part
day
of the
I
world
die.
that needs it.
This is a global crisis,
Nobody put no instructions
and
in
the
my body.
solutions must be shared equitably.
The vaccines right now are going to be heading first to the wealthiest countries. About 13% of the world's population are going to be getting about 51% of the available vaccines. Is it fair?
Well, there are many countries that have no vaccine
This
tactics at
clown
all.
ass.
And it doesn't make any sense that their citizens wouldn't get any protection.
If we want to vaccinate the
help but
world
smile.
and crush this outbreak, we are going to need several safe and effective vaccines.
We will have to bring the better part of our humanitarian goodwill to be sure that those who are most in need of the vaccines get the vaccines.
So while this massive operation hammers out how the vaccine is going to get to us, the question really becomes, when will I get it? And that is something that was controlled exclusively by the FDA.
So we're going to have a vaccine very soon, maybe even before a very special date. You know what date I'm talking about? We're going to have the vaccine.
As the presidential campaign heats up, President Trump grows more insistent in saying the vaccine's going to be out by Election Day.
But it really might even be delivered before the end of October. How do you like that? Wouldn't that be nice?
I'm the guy that got you the vaccine. I'm getting it by election day. Vote for me. That's essentially the message from Donald Trump.
The head of the FDA is Stephen Hahn, the commissioner. He was appointed by President Trump, and scientists were frankly worried that Commissioner Hahn was going to cave to pressure from President Trump and rush out a vaccine that wasn't ready in order to help the president's chances on re-election.
But we've done a great job with the FDA at clearing a path.
I think what they seemed to be doing was bending to the will of the executive branch.
If people couldn't trust the FDA, they weren't going to trust the vaccine. They weren't going to take it. But this time, the head of the FDA
so now y'all have to figure out how to get people to
that's
trust
it.
the FDA.
The FDA told vaccine makers they want volunteers monitored for at least 2 months after receiving the last dose. The guidelines would make it virtually impossible for any company to be granted
All you got in the
emergency
FDA is a
authorization
revolving
for the
door
vaccine
for
before
Big
election
Pharma
day.
The
execs.
decisions we have reached
all
and
it is.
will reach in the future will be made by FDA scientists and have been and will be based on science and data, not politics.
When he stood up for the American public there, I think we all breathed a sigh of relief.
The president was furious that the FDA wasn't going by his timeline, a political timeline. Let's get this done now.
So is 2 months enough time? I mean, 2 months isn't 2 years, so wouldn't it make more sense to study it for longer? You're not going to do a 7-year study or a 10-year study or a 15-year study when the virus is killing more than 250,000 people a year.
The nation reaching that grim new milestone. More than 250,000 lives lost to the coronavirus.
I think it's okay to be scared, but right now, we do have to make a decision, not just for our lives and for our physical well-being, but for our country.
Make a decision for yourself. All right, so we're gonna end it there.
Is what being live is all
Y'all
about.
take it easy.